Hello beautiful people. In this video we're going to talk about the staging area and the working tree in Git. What's the staging area? Why do we need it? What's the working tree? We're going to answer all of them and talk about commands like git add, status, diff, clean, and all the common commands that you may use in your daily work to work between the staging area and the working tree. Okay, first of all, let's check what version of Git we're using. So Git version. Okay, I'm using the 2.32 version of Git, but if your version is above 2.3, you should be good to go. But if you want to upgrade or install Git, you can check out my previous video. I'll leave the link in the description below. Okay, now choose a directory. I'm gonna go with /temp, but you can use your desktop, home directory, whatever, it doesn't matter. Just choose one and change your path to that. So open your terminal, then type cd/temp. Then create a new directory there. So make directory test. Then let's change the path to that directory. So cd test. Okay, I'm using Tmax here just so I can split my terminal and show you guys with each git command we run here what will happen in the git directory, which if you don't know about it, it's where all git stuff lives, which is hidden by default just to prevent screw things up there. So you can't normally see or remove anything there, but it's possible to do anything with it. After all, it's just a directory at the end. Okay, so Tmax. I'm in the vertical pane here. Okay, let's watch this directory. So watch -n 01 for the time to refresh and -d for directory, 3-a to see all the files, even the hidden one like .git directory. That means here. If you don't know what it all means, don't worry, I'm just gonna use this command to show you what will happen when we run git commands. And if you don't have the watch or the three commands available on your OS, you can install them with the package manager you have on your OS. Okay, now let's make this directory a git directory. So git init -b main to set our default branch to main instead of master. Did you notice that? Now we have an initialized git repository here and a .git directory which has a bunch of files in it, but this is an empty directory and we need to have something so we can track it with git. So let's create a new file. So echo hello world to hello.txt. Okay, nothing changed here except the hello file, because by default Git doesn't track files, so we need to tell Git to track the file we want Git to track. So now if I check the git status, so git status, as you see, it's showing us that we have an untracked file here and we can track it using the git add file command. Okay, let's talk a bit about the status command. I think it's the most used command in Git, and it's fairly easy to understand. Look, we're on branch main, which is the default branch. My terminal is showing that too. Okay, we didn't commit anything here. Okay, and this is the list of untracked files. One of the most useful things about the status command is it always shows us some hints about what we can do next. As you see, it's telling us that we can add this file or track this file using the add command. And that's exactly what we're going to do. We're going to add this file to the staging area. Just look, git add and the name of the file. So hello.txt. Wow, did you see what happened here? Now we have an index directory in our .git directory and a new object in the object directory. I'm going to explain what's going on here in just a bit, but before that you need to know about the staging area. So there are three places for your files in Git: working tree, staging area, and a Git repository. Working tree or working area, whatever, is where you interact with your files. Look, here I can easily list my files, ls, edit them, delete them, anything. This is my working tree. But we have two more areas in Git: index or staging area and the Git repository. They're both in the .git directory, so you can't see them. You need to use a git special command to work with those areas. Git repository is why we use Git. Our commits and everything about them is in the Git repository. So Git repository is actually the main Git area. So you might ask, okay, I have my working tree, which is where I can see my files and interact with them. And then I have the Git repository where I put my save points there. So it seems that these two areas are enough. I can edit my files in the staging area, then save them into the Git repository. Then why in the heck do I need the staging area? Well, if that's your question, you're kind of right. And a lot of other version control systems don't use something like the staging area, but Git does. Well, consider staging area as a place that you can review your changes before saving them in the Git repository. This is where you choose what you want to go to the next commit. And believe it or not, it's very useful. Personally, it has saved my butt so many times. There was a time I was working like 5 hours continuously to fix a freaking bug, and when I fixed it, I was like, okay, I'm just gonna push the changes and get some sleep. The bad thing was that there was another bug in the changes, an obvious bug. So I add the changes to the staging area, check the difference between what I had before and what I have now. Then I noticed the new bug, and I was like, thank God I saw this before putting the changes in the Git repository. Or with the staging area, you can choose what part of the changes you want to go to the next commit. Imagine that you add like 10 lines of code in a file and you want to commit them, but the last 3 lines are about a different topic comparing to the first 7 lines. So it's good to commit them separately. So without the staging area, we need to either remove the last 3 lines and add them later, or we can just create a temporary copy of that file. But with the staging area, we can just choose the part of changes we want to go to the next commit. Okay, now that you know about Git 3 areas, you should know that we don't move files from one area to another. We copy them from one area to another. For example, if you use git add to add your files to the staging area, you just copy the files or file from your working tree to your staging area. Then when you commit them, you copy your files from the staging area to the Git repository. So just remember that. To summarize, when we want to save some changes in the Git repository, usually we'll save them in 3 areas in order. First, the working tree, when we create a file or change it. Then we add it to the staging area to review it and make sure those are the right changes that we want in the next commit. Then we'll commit them. Okay, how can we know what we have in the staging area? Because if you want to know what you have in the working tree, you enter a command like ls or tree in your directory in your terminal, or even you can open it with a GUI file explorer like Finder on Mac. Look, open dot. Okay, and here's our working directory. But what about the staging area? There's an index here in the .git directory, and you know, index means the staging area in Git. But can we use that to access our files in the staging area? Well, the answer is no. But let's try. So if I do a ls-l.git, okay, the index is a file, not a directory. Look, cd.git/index. C, not a directory. So let's print out its contents. So cat.git/index. Okay, it's a binary file, so we can't do anything here. Then how to check the staging area? Well, we can use the status command. Look, git status. As you see, it's saying that we have a new file here ready to be committed. And we know what that means, right? This means we have a new file in our staging area, but if you want a more specific command that shows you a list of files that you have in the staging area, you can use ls-files. Look, git ls-files-s for stage, and there is our hello.txt with a bunch of other stuff like its mode that says it's a regular file and it's 40 digits hash. This is exactly what we have in the objects directory. The 2 first characters as a directory, then the rest. This is how Git stores your file. It stores them as objects with a unique ID. I'm gonna dive deeper in hashes and stuff like that later in future videos, but for now, just know that this is how Git stores your files as an object in the objects directory with a unique ID. Okay, now that we know about Git ls-files and we know we have hello.txt in the staging area, but can we remove it from there? Well, yes, but again, with a git command. But you might say, oh, come on, there are lots of commands that I need to remember, or oh my god, Git is so hard. Well, Git is a complicated tool, but the thing is, you need to understand how to work with Git, not remembering commands. Look, if I enter git status here again, we saw this stuff before, but at the bottom, it's telling us that use git rm -cache to unstage. And that's it. So let's try that. Git rm -cached hello.txt. Okay, now if I check the status again, git status, boom, now it's an untracked file. And git ls-files-s, as you see, it's not here either. So let's add that again. So git add hello.txt, and as you see, it's in the staging area. And if I check the status, git status, it's a new file and ready to be committed. But sometimes, especially when you're more familiar with Git stuff, you don't need this much information. So it's good to know that there are several versions of the status command, like the long version, which is what we see when we type git status, and the short version, which we can access by typing git status, then --short or -s. At first you might say, oh man, this is too much. I don't even know what's going on here anymore. But this is actually fairly easy when you get used to it. This command will show us the state of the file in both staging area and the working tree. A means added. There are actually two columns here. The left one is the state of the file in the staging area, and the right one is for the working tree. And because we didn't change the file in the working tree, it's empty. But if I add something to this file again, like echo change number 1, one greater sign would replace what we already have there, but two greater signs will just add it to a new line. Okay, then hello.txt. Okay, then let's check the short status again. So git status -s. Okay, now it's modified in the working tree. We have also a verbose version of the status command. Look, git status --verbose or just -v. Okay, this is what we had with the default status, but this stuff at the bottom, they are new. It's showing us the difference between what we saved in the Git repository and what we have in the staging area, which is so cool. But there's a special command for that, and usually people use that one, and we're going to talk about that later. But before that, what's with this stuff? Okay, it's saying diff, a git diff, and we're comparing file A hello.txt and file B hello.txt again. It's basically comparing two versions of a file. Every diff command needs input files, and these two versions of our hello files are the inputs. This is just the metadata for these files in the Git repository. New file because we didn't save it in the Git repository yet. Mode 100644, it's a regular file, and it's hash in the staging area, which is what we have in the staging area. You can see that in the objects directory too. And because we don't have any version of this file in the staging area, it's comparing what we have in the staging area to nothing. And we've added a new line here, which is hello world. Let's talk more about git diff in the diff command. So we have a new file in the staging area comparing to the Git repository, and a modified file in the working tree compared to the staging area, because these are the steps to save a change in the Git repository: working tree, staging area, and the Git repository. That's why Git is comparing each area with the next one. And there's a special command to actually see the changes and know why the files are modified, and that's the diff command. So type git --no -pager, so it won't open it on a new page, then diff. Diff command compares two items with each other, A and B. In this case, A is the previous version of the file, the one that is in the staging area, and B is the new one, which is in our working copy, the one we changed recently. --git means we're in a git format of diff. This line is a bit technical. It shows us metadata of the file, like the first 7 characters of the file's hash and its mode. If you take a closer look here at the objects directory, you can see that this is just like the name of this directory plus this file in it. This is a hash that Git created for us, one for the file we tracked in our working copy and one for the file we added to the staging area, so this way Git can compare them. You don't need to know about this stuff. It's just good to be familiar with how Git works. Okay, minus means the changes for file A, and as you probably guessed, the plus sign means it's for file B, our current version of the file. And if we go one line down, we see these numbers enclosed with two symbols. This is the so-called hunk header. A hunk is a portion of our changes. It doesn't show us the whole file's content, and we don't need it to, right? Imagine we have a large file with 60 lines of code, but we just changed one word in that file, so we don't need to see the whole lines. We just need the changes and maybe 3 lines after and before the changes. And that's exactly what Git gives us, the portions of the files we changed and some extra unchanged lines before and after the lines we've changed. So here's our hunk header. The first column is the number of the line changes, and the second column is where our changes start. In the previous file, because of the minus sign, we have one line change, because before that it was empty, so nothing here. But in the file B, because of the plus sign, we've changed one line, starting from line number 2. Then at the bottom, we have the changes. It's obvious that we've added this line because it's green and has a plus sign here. Okay, I'm not saying it's simple and easy to remember, but once you get used to it, you'll be fine. Git diff will compare the version of the file we have in the working tree with the version of the file in the place we put after diff. For example, git -- no pager diff, then we can put a commit ID here. Or by default, it will compare it to the file we have in the working tree. Or we can put -- staged here to compare what we have in the staging area and what we have in the Git repository. And because we didn't save anything in the Git repository, it's comparing it to nothing. Now let's add more changes to this file. So echo change number 2 to hello.txt, and if I print out the content of the file, so get hello.txt, as you see, we have a new line here. But what if we want our next commit to contain only change number 2? Then after that, we want to commit change number 1. It's a common situation, right? We've done 2 topics, but we don't want to commit them together. We want to commit them separately. And as I said, the staging area is where we choose what we want to go to our next commit. So how can we choose only the change number 2 to go to our next commit? Well, you can use the P option with the add command. Look, git status -s, okay, it's modified and has change 1 and 2 in it. So let's add only the change number 2. So git add -p. Wow, okay, its output is just like the diff command except this line at the bottom. What are these letters? You don't need to know them. The only thing you need to know here is the question mark. As you see, there's also a question mark here in the list along with these letters. It's like a help page, and if I type it and hit enter, it's telling me that what would these letters do if we enter them here. So among these options, I want to edit the changes so I can choose what I want to go to the next commit. So type E, then hit enter. And because I configured my default editor to be VS Code, it opened VS Code. So now I can remove the portion I don't want to be in the next commit. So, okay. If you didn't configure your default editor for Git, you can type git config -- global code.editor code -- wait. But I have a special video for how to configure Git. You can check that out. I will also put a link in the description below. Okay, let's check the diff command again. So git -- no pager diff. As you see, the only change we have here is change number 1. And if I check the status, so git status, as you see, it's a new file. But because the file is untracked in the working tree, we can restore the file to discard the changes. So let's do that. git restore hello.txt. Now if I hit enter, it will replace the version of the file we have in the working tree with the one in the staging area. So hit enter. And if I check the status again, it's not modified anymore. It's the same version we have in the staging area. Look, git dash no pager diff. If I hit enter, it should return nothing because there's nothing to compare. The version we have in this working tree is the same version we have in the staging area. Okay, let's learn another useful command for staging area. Imagine you want to move or remove a file. For example, we want to move hello.txt to source hello.txt. Well, let's do that and see what would happen. So git status -s. Okay, this is what we have for now. Then make directory source to create the source directory. Git status -s. As you see, Git doesn't care about empty directories because Git is a file tracker, so it doesn't care about the directory until we put something in there. So move command is used to rename or move a file. So move hello.txt to source hello.txt. If I check the status again, git status -s is saying that our hello file is deleted in the working tree. And we have also a new directory to tracks because it's not empty anymore. Well, now we need to add what we've done to the staging area. So git add source to add the source directory and all the files in it. Then git status -s. Now it's added, but it's tedious, right? So git has commands for renaming, moving, and deleting files and directories. And it's bit simple if you already are familiar with some basic Unix commands like remove or move. How? Just put the git word before the command, like git move source hello.txt to hello.txt. Then let's check the status. So git status -s. As you see, it's not in the source directory anymore, and we can put it back to the source directory, this time using the git move command. So git move hello.txt to source hello.txt. Then let's check the status. So git status -s. As you see, it's in the source directory. You can also use git rm just like we did to remove files from the staging area, but without any parameter that points to the staging area, like git rm source. And because it's a directory, we need to add the r parameter. So git rm-r source, and as you see, it's saying it will change the version we have in the staging area. So you need to either force the removal or remove the file from the staging area. So there are situations that you may see that Git is asking you to do something, or just use -f to force the removal. And I highly recommend you to check what you're doing. I know that I want to remove the file from both a staging area and the working tree, so I use the if option. So git rm -r, we can put the if option here after r, so f src. As you see, git status -s, git ls-files-s it's completely gone, so there's no turning back, and that's why Git showed us an error. Another useful command you can use with untracked files is git clean. There are times that you might want to clean up your working directory from untracked files. Just type git help clean. It will remove untracked files from the working tree. It may not seem very useful, but believe me, it's useful. There are times you screwed things up, maybe made some files, but you know they're not what you want, so you may want to start over in a better way. The most important options we have with the clean command is -d to remove untracked directory and subdirectories too, because by default it only removes untracked files, not directories. -f to force the operation. By default, the git clean command doesn't work. We have to use -f if we want this command to actually work, to actually do something, because you know it kind of is a dangerous command because it will remove some files, and that can be undone. That's why by default we need to use the if option to force the operation. It's a little bit strange, I know, but it means it's very important. So Git kinda warns you that, hey, are you sure about what you're doing here? So by adding -if after the clean command, you say, yeah, I'm pretty sure. But we can also configure Git so we don't need -f for git clean to actually do something. Look, Q to quit. I'll leave the rest of these options to you. Then enter git config -- global, or let's just keep it locally, because it's safer this way. Clean dot require force, then false. Now let's create some temporary files to check how git clean works. So touch foo.txt, touch bar.txt, touch source/buzz.txt. Oops, we removed the source directory, so we need to create it first. So make directory source, then touch source was.txt. Make directory logs, touch logs /log1.log, and let's add the logs directory to the ignore files. So echo logs directory to .git ignore, and if I check the status, git status, there's no logs directory because we told git to ignore it. So let's add the .git ignore file to the staging area. Git add .git ignore. Now I can enter git clean to remove untracked files, -d to also remove directories, x to remove ignored files too, and to simulate which files will be removed. Okay, this will clean up our working directory. Let's do it then. Git clean -dx, this time without the end parameter. And okay, done. Now we have a clean working directory. Even the logs directory is gone. Okay, thanks for watching, and see you in the next video.